Access to Democracy is made possible thanks to the following organizations. Sheridan & Dulas, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm that has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009. Sheridan & Dulas are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Distillery was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at their facility. If you're interested in learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check their website and plan a visit to tour their facility and taste their spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Steve Francisco. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to welcome to our studio a new guest, her first time appearance on our show. Mary Robinson is the Communications Manager for MNSure, the Minnesota Health Insurance Marketplace. Mary, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thanks for having me.
So I always like to ask first-time guests, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Ohio. I grew up in Cincinnati, so that's southwestern Ohio. I went to school out in the University of Colorado at Boulder. I graduated from there with a degree in geography. And then a few years later, I moved to Minnesota. So I am still considered a transplant, even though I've been here for over a dozen years.
Oh, I think over a dozen years easily qualifies you as a Minnesotan.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
So when did you join MNSure?
Sure, about 5 years ago. So I started in 2021.
And your positions with MNSure have been in communications and marketing.
Yes, and broadly speaking, public affairs.
And tell us a little bit more about what your responsibilities involve in your current position.
Sure. As the communications manager, I lead a small team, and we're responsible for all of the marketing and communications functions for the marketplace. And that includes overseeing our paid campaign each year during our open enrollment season.
Very good. So when was MNSure created and why was it created?
So MNSure's founding legislation was passed back in 2013. And at the time, lawmakers wanted to create a one-stop shop that would expand access to coverage and allow Minnesota to retain local control and also ensure that Minnesotans directly benefited from the Affordable Care Act.
And it was really the Affordable Care Act that had been passed earlier that encouraged states to create precisely this type of marketplace, right?
That's right. And there are many benefits to having a state-based marketplace rather than going through the federal exchange.
And we're going to talk about some of those in more detail. So if you would, Mary, could you describe briefly what is MNSure and how does it operate?
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier, it's the health insurance marketplace. We're the official health insurance marketplace, which means we're the only place for consumers to find tax credits that can help lower their healthcare costs. And it's the best place to go to smooth out the process. So it's where people can find help, apply for financial help, and compare plans.
And one thing that you are not, just to be very clear with our viewers, you're not an insurance company, are you? You don't offer insurance. MNSure doesn't offer insurance itself. You are offering products by private insurance companies.
That's right. You can kind of think of it like a public-private partnership. So MNSure is the state-run health insurance marketplace. So we are an online shopping platform where people can come and shop and compare plans. And we partner with private insurance companies, and that's who's offering the coverage.
And who is eligible to purchase health insurance through MNSure?
So we primarily help those Minnesotans who don't have access to employer-sponsored coverage. So just to give you a little bit of context, in Minnesota, most Minnesotans get their health insurance through their jobs or a spouse's job. But that leaves many people without access to employer-sponsored insurance. So we help people like farmers, entrepreneurs, small business owners.
Would it include people who are perhaps self-insured too? I'm sorry, not self-insured, self-employed, I meant to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Self-employed.
Yes, exactly. Those small business owners, folks who are self-employed, gig workers, people who are working multiple part-time jobs, really a wide variety of people. And I would also add early retirees. So the people who have left the workforce but aren't yet eligible for Medicare. They also need coverage, and we're here to help.
And the most recent year, how many Minnesotans have obtained health insurance through a plan offered by MNSure?
So right now, currently, we have about 133,000 enrollees.
And have you seen the number of Minnesotans participating in MNSure go up since it was created, or has the number stayed steady?
We've seen incredible growth, especially in the last few years, thanks to increased federal financial help. And that came through some congressional action, first back in 2021, and then it was later extended for a few more years through 2025. And I would say in recent years, our growth has pretty much been around 10 to 12% year over year.
Interesting. So are the plans that are offered through MNSure, are they what we would call comprehensive plans, that they address a range of healthcare issues that an individual or their family might be facing?
Yes, absolutely. It's comprehensive coverage. And that's really thanks to the Affordable Care Act, like you mentioned earlier. Thanks to the ACA, all plans sold through MNSure are guaranteed to cover a set of 10 important healthcare services. And that includes, things like your routine vaccinations and flu shots, office visits, through emergency services and hospital stays.
Annual physical exams included in that too?
Yep, so that would be covered as preventive care.
How about mammograms for women?
Exactly.
Things such as that?
Those are great examples of some of the important cancer screenings that are also covered by MNSure plans. And I would emphasize, that there are lots of options out there, especially this time of year during open enrollment. Folks might be seeing ads or they're being marketed other types of plans, and often those aren't real insurance and they don't cover the same things that MNSure plans do. Interesting.
So there is this base foundation of elements in the plans that are offered through MNSure that they all have to provide.
That's right. That's right. All plans are regulated and approved, and they come from licensed companies in the state of Minnesota, so it's coverage that people really can trust.
And it seems that a big element of this includes preventive screening. We talked earlier about mammograms, cancer screenings, annual health checkups. I myself had the experience where my primary care doctor caught a serious health issue that I had about 6 years ago, prostate cancer, that I later learned that some doctors don't perform the PSA test on their male patients. Luckily, my doctor did, and because it was caught early and biopsied, turned out to be a serious cancer, but was successfully treated because it was caught early. So that idea of preventive health care through these insurance plans is really, really important, and it also makes good economic sense too, doesn't it?
You're really making the points for me here. I totally agree. And I think the fact that all of the plans cover preventive care is important. That helps people to access care, it helps them to see their doctor, and it can often, like you mentioned, help catch problems early before they become, a major medical issue.
So a real important part of what MNSure does, you don't just offer private health insurance plans, do you? You have people that contact you through your website or by phone who maybe can't afford to purchase a private plan, but they may be eligible for a public insurance plan such as Medicaid or Minnesota Care, right? Could you say a word about that?
Sure. So one of the benefits of our state-based marketplace is that we truly are that one-stop shop that I mentioned before. So we are coordinated with public programs. And that means that Minnesotans can come to MNSure.org and they can fill out one application and find out what they might qualify for. So depending on how much money your family makes, you might be eligible for medical assistance, which is the name of the Medicaid program here in Minnesota, or Minnesota Care, Or you could be eligible potentially for tax credits to lower the cost of a private health plan.
Which could make a private plan, perhaps, would make it more affordable for you.
Exactly.
Or for your family too. What about pre-existing medical conditions? Do any of the MNsure plans, are they able to exclude people from coverage because of pre-existing conditions, or is that something that is prohibited because of the ACA?
Exactly. It's prohibited because of the ACA.
So if you have cancer or a history of diabetes
Right.
or high blood pressure or other health issues that
Right.
previously, before the ACA, an insurer could deny coverage and say, you're too high a risk and we may have to spend too much money on your care. They cannot do that under any of the plans offered by MNsure?
That's correct. That's one of the main benefits of the Affordable Care Act. And it's why we really feel that consumers who are looking for comprehensive coverage should start at MNsure.org, because they can trust that all of the plans are guaranteed to cover those important benefits that I mentioned before. And they also come with important consumer protections, like you mentioned, not being able to, for example, no discrimination against pre-existing conditions.
Right. Mary, on your website, you have something called a plan comparison tool. Tell us a little bit more about how that works, and when a person goes to your website, how can they use that tool?
That's an important point. I'm really glad that you asked. So when consumers come to MNsure.org, they can get a quick cost estimate to see what they might be eligible for and whether they qualify for any savings that could lower their healthcare costs. So they just need to put in a couple of key pieces of information, and that's who's in your household, things like your age, how many people you live with, that sort of thing, where you live, so a zip code usually, and then your expected income for the year. So with just 3 pieces of information, they can put that in the plan comparison tool that you mentioned, and then they can view plans that are available in their area.
And so with this plan comparison tool, could it flag for a person whether or not they're eligible for one of the public health insurance plans
Yes.
versus a private insurance plan?
Yes, it would give you an initial estimate of what you might be eligible for. For example, one of the public programs like medical assistance or Minnesota Care, or potentially tax credits to lower the cost of a private plan.
And just among the private insurance plans, it's going to give you some idea of the premium cost, right?
That's
so
right.
It's not going to pick a program for you, but it's going to give you an idea of some health insurance plans that are out there that might need your basic needs and that would be affordable to you.
Exactly. It's going to show you a range of options, and then you can use our online shopping tools to filter or sort based on what's important to you. So for example, if it's most important to you to make sure that your primary care provider is still in network, you can look at the provider networks and double check to make sure you can continue to see that physician. If you're more interested in finding the lowest monthly premium, you can sort by the monthly premium cost and find the best plan for you that way. So it's really designed, like a lot of online shopping experiences, to help you sift through your options.
And Mary, tell our viewers, what is the open season that we are in right now? What is open season? What does it mean, and
right.
how long does it run?
MNsure has an annual open enrollment period, and that is the annual opportunity for Minnesotans to come. They can shop, compare plans, they can change plans, or they can renew their coverage if they're in a plan for next year. They can come back and renew. And every year it runs from November 1st through January 15th.
So people still have time to go on the MNsure website to use the plan comparison tool and find a plan that may be good for them.
That's right. So we have just passed an important first deadline. December 15th was the deadline to sign up for coverage that starts January 1st. However, folks do have a couple more weeks before that January 15th deadline. That's our final deadline and the last day of open enrollment. And if they finish their enrollment by then, their coverage will start on February 1st instead. So there's still an opportunity to get covered for most of next year.
Are there some exceptions to the open enrollment period too? In other words, let's say that you change jobs in the middle of the year in, say, May or June next year, or something has happened where you have lost the health insurance that you previously had for some reason. Do those folks have an opportunity to still get a plan through MNsure?
I would say most do, yes. So after January 15th, once we're outside of that annual open enrollment period, most Minnesotans need what's called a qualifying life event to be eligible to enroll. And you just named a couple of great examples. So it's things like moving, having a baby, getting married. Those are all examples of what we call qualifying life events that mean you would probably be eligible to enroll in a plan.
One of the biggest questions I think on everyone's mind these days, and it's all over the news, is the skyrocketing cost of health insurance premiums. Unfortunately, it appears that the U.S. House of Representatives has adjourned before taking action before the ACA subsidies that are in place expire at the end of this year. Congress won't come back until January, and it's not clear whether they are going to extend those ACA subsidies.
Right.
Why is this so critical that the Congress moved to extend these subsidies that are set to expire?
Well, I can tell you that the enhanced tax credits that are currently in place have a demonstrated track record of success. So this was a policy that Congress enacted in order to help more Americans stay covered, and it's been wildly successful. Just in the last few years, since 2020, enrollment through the marketplaces has more than doubled to a national record of 24 million Americans, which is incredible. That means more people than ever before are able to access the health care that they deserve. Here in Minnesota, it's also been very useful in reducing costs for families, ensuring people have access to care, and also more on the macro level scale, it's been helpful for reducing our uninsured rate. So we've really seen the benefits of this policy in the last few years, and unfortunately now we feel like a lot of that progress is at risk.
Mary, what was the rate of uninsurance in Minnesota in 2013 when MNSure was created?
I believe it was upwards of 8%.
And what was it this past year?
It's now below 4%.
So it's been cut by more than half.
Yes.
Because of having these subsidies and programs available through MNSure.
I would say, it's many things working together. Many things working together, but Minnesota has made incredible progress towards reducing our uninsured rate, and that's thanks to great work of both state agencies, but also our partners at the counties, tribes, and other folks who are helping more Minnesotans to get covered.
One of the questions I think people are wondering about too is why are they seeing these steep increases? What are some of the factors that you think have contributed to these skyrocketing premiums that are frankly going to put health insurance out of the reach of many people unless they can get into a plan through MNSure? What are the factors driving this increase in health insurance costs?
Yeah. So plans and prices change every year. So we expect some amount of change. That's fairly normal. This year, I would say many Minnesotans are seeing bigger changes. And one of the major factors driving that are these policy changes happening at the federal level. So one in particular is that the enhanced tax credits that have been helping to make coverage more affordable for tens of thousands of families, they're scheduled to expire at the end of this year. So many families are facing increasing premium costs starting January 1st.
So if I understand this correctly, seeing those subsidies expire is actually contributing to premium increases for people who are not on public programs, for people who have private health insurance. They are seeing their premiums rising in part because of cutbacks in programs for people in need.
Right. So what is at risk, really, are these enhancements to the original premium tax credits that were introduced through the Affordable Care Act. So when Congress passed that legislation, they improved the tax credits in two ways. They expanded eligibility so that more families could qualify for this type of financial help through MNSure, and they made the existing tax credits more generous so that folks were saving more.
What kind of outreach does MNSure do in, say, greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities Metro? How do you reach out to people to make them aware of this marketplace and how they can use the tools such as the price comparison plan that you have on your website?
Well, we have a couple of tools in our toolbox that we use. One is earned media, so trying to
Such as this?
exactly take advantage of opportunities that we have to speak to members of the media and share our story so that more folks are aware of MNSure and what it offers. We also have a very comprehensive paid advertising campaign that I just mentioned briefly earlier, where we have statewide reach. It's primarily digital, but we also have, billboards and out-of-home signage, TV ads, all of the things that that people would associate with a major advertising campaign. And then one of the third tools I would say is that we support a statewide network of brokers and navigators. And those are really the folks on the ground who are helping Minnesotans every day to fill out applications, understand their options, and enroll in coverage.
Are these MNSure employees, or are they volunteers, or they work for other companies?
That's a good question. It's a range. So there are folks who work for counties. There are navigators who work for trusted local community organizations. Many of them are nonprofits who are working in community to reach folks who need services. And then we also have the insurance brokers, and those are what you would think of as a traditional insurance agent. So they're often self-employed or working for a small brokerage firm. And they are also partners for MNSure.
So I'm curious, and consumers may be wondering too, does MNSure have any enforcement powers against companies that sell their insurance products through the marketplace? In other words, if they have a complaint against a private health insurer that they wouldn't cover a particular medical condition, do they have any recourse through MNSure? Or do they have to accept whatever the insurance company says as the final word, whether or not they will pay for a particular procedure?
Right. So the relevant folks to go to would be the Minnesota Department of Commerce. They regulate the insurance industry in Minnesota. So if someone had a complaint or would like to appeal a claim issue, my best advice would be to contact the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
And they have a website, they're a state government agency, of course.
They do.
Yeah.
They have an entire division that is dedicated to insurance and can certainly field those types of consumer complaints.
Right. So, of course, MNSure has its own board of directors. You have the leadership team.
We do.
Your officers. Tell us about your board of directors. Who are the folks on the board? Not specific names necessarily, but where did they come from? What professional background do they come from that qualifies them to be on the MNSure board?
Sure. Well, our board of directors has rotating membership, so folks do come on and serve terms and cycle off. So it is not always changing, but we have had some change over the years and turnover. I would say that it's represented by folks from a number of different industries, including academia and the private sector. So it really varies, I think. Each board member also has a specialty, so they are there to represent the interests of a specific group. For example, a focus on consumers who are public program eligible, or a focus on the consumers who buy private plans.
And so how is your board selected? Are they chosen by the governor or members of the legislature, or how do they get to the positions of being on the board?
They are appointed by the governor.
And the term?
I don't have that answer
for board, that's okay.
in front of me.
For board members, but they serve a period of a couple of years, I would assume.
Yes, I believe it's a 2-year term.
Okay, very good. So with MNSure being in this marketplace, how does our marketplace compare to some other states in terms of how many people use it, percentage of population? Obviously, states differ in population significantly.
Yep.
More than 40 million people in California, about
Right.
5.7 million Minnesotans. How do we compare to other states in terms of how our marketplace works?
Right. I think every market is different, like you said. So any comparison is going to be fairly conditional. But I would say that Minnesota has a very strong marketplace. I think I'm really proud of the efforts that we've made over the last 10 plus years in helping more Minnesotans than ever before have the security of health insurance.
Do you see any of the participating companies in MNSure stepping out of the marketplace, or are they continuing to remain? In other words, we've seen instances in some states where insurance companies, health insurance companies, are pulling out of particular markets because of the costs of providing insurance to those populations. Are we seeing any of that happening in Minnesota or no?
So Minnesota's market is fairly stable. There has been one recent definitive agreement reached between two of the insurance companies that we partner with, and that is between Medica and UCare. So Medica has reached an agreement to buy certain UCare contracts and policies, which means that our current UCare enrollees will transition to coverage under Medica going forward.
Interesting. And Minnesota's had a reputation traditionally as being a pretty healthy state. I think we rank near the top, if I'm not mistaken. At least we used to, in terms of measures like life expectancy and other things. And isn't a lot of that attributable to the fact that we have a relatively low rate of uninsurance among our population compared to other states?
I certainly think that there's a correlation there. Minnesotans certainly understand and they understand the importance of having health insurance, and they see it as critical to their wellness, their family's health, and just having that security.
In many places, it's been noted that there are significant racial and economic disparities in people's access to health care. And so something like MNSure can help to mitigate some of those disparities, doesn't it? Particularly the aspect of this where you can direct people toward public insurance programs such as Medicaid or Minnesota Care to help people who can't afford a private plan, right?
I think so, and I would just add another one of the benefits really to having a state-based marketplace means that we can tailor our outreach and marketing. So we can direct our resources to try and reach Minnesotans in those communities that have higher rates of uninsurance. We're not tied to the national campaign that's associated with the federal marketplace. So we can really tailor our marketing towards reaching Minnesotans who need MNsure, who need health coverage. So for example, with our paid campaign, we make incredible efforts to try to reach those areas and zip codes specifically where we see higher rates of uninsurance and higher health disparities.
And I'm going to guess the higher rates of uninsurance, again, are occurring in poorer communities, lower income communities, sometimes on the reservations in northern Minnesota, places such as that.
You know, it really varies. So there are areas where there are higher rates of uninsurance in rural areas, but we also see that in some urban communities. So, you know, it's both, I would say. And that's why it's important for us to really have an important mix between reaching everyone statewide and then also really targeting those efforts to reach communities with higher rates of uninsurance.
And we shouldn't forget, being here in Eagan, there are even pockets of poverty in relatively affluent suburban communities such as this. People that may find themselves stretched to the limit.
Yes, I would also say that, you know, the economics is one piece of it, but sometimes, you know, it's really just a question of folks not knowing that there are options out there. They might just not have that education and awareness to know that MNsure exists or that we're here to help them find a plan.
Now, I looked at your website this morning, and there was a notice up at the top of the website said you're experiencing a very high volume of calls, obviously with January 15 deadline coming up not too far away, less than a month away. So if people can't reach you on the phone, they can certainly go to the website on their computer and look you up. But if they reach you on the phone, what about language services for people who English is not their first language? You offer services to people in other languages, don't you?
We do. So we have a language support line so that folks can get help in their language, in the language that they speak in their community. And that's really helped improve access to coverage, again, for many communities across Minnesota. I would also add that, you know, even when we have high call volumes, we do have a courtesy callback feature. So you can ask, instead of waiting on the line, you can ask for a courtesy callback and someone
they'll get a call back.
Exactly. So you'd be able to hang up the phone and someone will return your call.
Mary Robinson, Communications Manager for MNsure, Minnesota's health insurance marketplace. Thank you for being our guest today on Access to Democracy.